this module, we're going to cover arrays and also how the for in loop can be modified a little bit to actually work with arrays easily. So we'll do it in 5 different topics. One, what is an array? Secondly, why do we need them? The third will be how do we declare them? The fourth is how do we operate on arrays? And then finally, we'll look at the for in loop construct and how we can use that to work with arrays. So to start out with, one task might be for the students to sort of work in teams and write a simple program that basically prints out the first names of 3 students in the class. So once they come back from that, I'm going to propose a couple of solutions. One of them might look like this. So in this scenario, we have a program where we've declared 3 variables here, and they're all strings. We've declared or assigned them initial values. So in this case, Sally, Kevin, and Mia. And then we actually print those names out. So that program actually works and does do what we asked them to do. Now, another solution would be we don't have to necessarily, we can do it as part of the declaration. So we can say we declare name 1, we say it's of type string, and we can say it has an initial value. So we could do that as well. That shortens it up a little bit. But the thing that we want to think about is what if we wanted to do all the students in the class? So instead of it being 3, let's say our class size is 20 or 30 students. How would we change this program to do that? Well, this is what we kind of have to do. And this is only the first 9 students. So imagine if we had 30 students, this would really get unwieldy. And this is not something that is going to scale well or maintain well. So we don't want to do this. This is a perfect spot where arrays are going to help us out. So arrays to the rescue. To show you how to declare an array, we start out and we say, well, we have a variable called, in this case, names. It could be whatever name we want. And what we're going to do is add 2 brackets around the type that the array is going to have. So in this case, think of it like a list. And it's going to be a list of different items. All are strings in this case. And this will declare our array. So again, it's a type with a left and right square bracket around it will turn it into an array. Again, an array is like a list. And that type can be whatever we want. So we could do strings, we could do integers, we could do any number of types that we want. It has to be the same type, though, throughout the entire list. And then we could initialize it as well. So here we're initializing it with 3 names, Sally, Kevin, and Mia. And now we have 3 different names in a list, all referenced by this variable names. And to do that, we start with an open left bracket to do the initialization. We then give it our first value. We then follow it with a comma. We then do a second value, follow it with a comma, and then a third value. And then if it's the last value, we don't put another comma in. We just leave it off, and we close it with a right square bracket. So we could list as many things as we wanted to in here, from 1 to 1,000 different names if we wanted to. And we just keep listing them out, putting commas between each one. And as I said before, we could do this with ints. So for example, if we said age int of the 3 students in the class, then that might be 15, 18, 16, something like that. And so we're putting those numbers in just like we would put in strings. They are all of type int, so that's legal. Of course, we changed the variable name here to age to make more sense for what we are actually storing in our list. So the array is an ordered list, and the key word here is ordered because it has an order to it, which we're going to talk about in just a second, and how you count in the array and how you access elements in the array. So the main thing we want to consider with this is that computer scientists always start counting at 0. And that will just be a tradition that you will think through and do all of your life if you go into computer science and into programming. We always start counting at 0. Interestingly, here in the United States, as an example, if you look at the number of floors in a building, the first floor is the what we refer to as floor 1. But when you go to Europe, as an example, the first floor is floor 0, and then they count. So even in Europe, they're counting starting with 0, for example, as they count floors in a building. So that's what we're doing. So in computer science, it turns out that a lot easier for us to do a lot of different things by always counting starting from 0. So for example, if we look at this array here, Sally is element 0 in the array. That is the index 0, so 0 refers to the first element of the array. Element 1 ends up being the second element in the array, but it is indexed as 1. 2 references the next element in the array. It happens to be the third element, but it's indexed as 2. So to sort of reinforce this, if I were to say print name with an index of 1, what do we believe will print? Will it be Sally, because it's the first element? Kevin, the second element? Mia, the third element? What does this reference? And as it turns out, because we start counting at 0, this 1 represents the second element because we're counting at 0. If this is a 1, we say 0, 1, 2. This is the 1, so that is the element. Element 1 in the array is what's going to get printed here. So let's do another one. So now we have print name 0. So this is the 0th element of the array. Well, we said we start counting at 0, so that means that it's probably Sally that will print, and that's correct. So when we do 0 here, we get Sally. Now, let's try another question and reverse it. What if we want to reference Mia? So we have 3 elements in the array, but we want to index this element. What number do we put here? And again, we could pause to see what the answers are. But if this is 0, this is 1, this is 2. So 2 is the right answer. 2 is what you would put in to reference Mia. And then a kind of an interesting question, is this even legal? What if I put name 3 here? What would that mean? So again, it's not the third element in the array. It's not coming back as Mia. It's really indexing from 0. So 0, 1, 2, 3 is out here. The list doesn't go that long. So it's actually past the boundary of the list or the array. And that's going to be a compiler error. That's going to be a runtime error, depending on how it's encountered. So those are error conditions where you're indexing outside of the bounds of that array. So how would we print all the names? So now that we have these names in a list, in an array, what's the easiest way to print them? So one way to do it would be to do it like this. This would be a very manual and arduous way to do it, and not much different than our example at the beginning showing the difficulties of having to do 30 people in a classroom. But we could do this. We could say name indexed at 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and that would print all of the names that we have in the list. But that's not really a very good way to do that. There is a better way. So the first thing to think about is how many elements are in this array. So even though we're counting index 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, the count of how many elements are in the array is a 5. There are 5 items in the array, indexed 0 through 4. And so if there are 5 elements in this array, then it turns out that we can go back to our trusty for in loop, and we can write a loop that actually iterates from 0 up to but less than the count, less than 5. So this is going to go 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. And that is what's going to print here. And now we are printing all 5 names, but we're doing it using an algorithm, using our for in loop. And we're not having to write all of those print statements separately. We're doing them in the for loop itself. So what would happen if we added a new name? So for example, I added Amy now to the list. So we actually have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 elements in the array. and they're indexed as 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But our for loop doesn't go up to 5. It only goes up to 4 because we have this less than right here, right? So it's 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. We haven't changed that. So if we look at how this is going to print out, we're going to get Sally, Kevin, Mia, John, and Rachel. Amy's not going to print because this for loop didn't get modified to the new size that we have here of that array, the new count, if you will. Now, the other alternative is what if we shortened it? So now we're down to Sally, Kevin, and Mia. So we've only got 3 elements in the array. The count is 3, and we address them as 0, 1, and 2. And now this still says 5 here. So this is going to go 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4 are out here. They don't exist. So this is going to be a fatal error. This is not going to work. As this runs, as soon as it goes beyond the bounds of this array, it's going to throw an exception, an error condition, and the program is going to crash, if you will, and it's not going to work properly. So there's a better way to handle this. And so what we did before is we looked at the count that was here, and then we hard-coded a number here. So now this has a count of 3. We still have this 5 here. That's what we want to fix and make better. And we can do that by using an attribute on the variable. So this variable names is an array. And because it's an array, it has various attributes that you can ask it questions. So right here, we have names. We can say .count. So that's how we express an attribute on the array or on the variable. So names.count. And when we do that, this is going to give us back the actual count of how many items are in our array. So as we can see here, if this is a 3, there's 3 things in the array, this names.count is going to return a 3. And so what's great about that is our for loop now is going to go 0, 1, 2, 0, 1, 2. And it's going to do that because we're going up to but not including 3, which again is the count of the number of elements in the array. So what happens if we do this? If we say we add John and Rachel onto the end of this, now we have 5 elements in the array. Our count is 5. That means that we're going to get a 5 here. So that means we'll get 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So without ever changing the code, all we had to do anytime we manipulated this array with the amount of items in it, we changed its count. The count attribute is taking care of that for us. So we're no longer hard coding a specific count. We're asking the attribute of the array to come back and tell us how many elements are in that array. So that is arrays and our new for in loop and how we're using it. So we've learned about what an array is. We've learned about why we need them. We've learned about how to declare them, how to operate on arrays, and finally, how to use the for in loop construct in a couple different ways along with the attribute count to actually iterate through the array elements.